Hi, my name is John Masko, and I am Principal Conductor at the Boston New Music Initiative. For this month's BNMI Composer Interview, I am here with Yangfan Xu, who is a Chinese composer living in Boston, and most importantly, is the winner of this year's BNMI commissioning competition, which means that a new work of hers will be premiered at BNMI's annual festival in May. Welcome, Yangfan.
Thank you so much, John.
Yes. Um, so, first thing I want to ask you is often the most interesting question to ask any composer, which is how did you come upon this unusual career of being a composer? How did you choose to do this? Tell us a bit about your journey.
Yeah, I love that. This is a really unusual career. So I was born from a musical family in China. My mom is a singer and she still sings soprano. My dad was a composer, but he passed away when I was 13. Um, this is the interesting thing. So my family actually never expected me to be another composer, another musician in the family, and I wasn't interested either because that's what the parents do. As a kid, but I did started playing the piano as purely as a hobby when I was little. Studied with my dad, but I was definitely not a child prodigy. I would only practice once a month. Um, so that was a little bit of my musical background. But there's something I would do since I was little. I would sing an original tune, or I would just improvising on the piano for fun, which I think it's planting a seed of my love and passion for composing and creating music.
Yeah. So, I mean, many of us have maybe a time when music switched over from being something you just sort of
Absolutely
did for fun or a chore into something you wanted to do. So, was there a specific time or period in your life when you
right.
felt that happen?
Right. I felt like the turning point was 1 year after my dad passed away. There was a period of time I started practicing piano a lot, like 8 hours a day. And when I sit on the piano and enjoying some Bach, I was playing one of the Bach preludes and fugue back then, and I feel like this impulse to play something that's my own and to indulge in these original melodies, in harmonies and rhythmic gestures I came up with, and I really enjoyed that. And I realized how addicted I was to music at the moment. That was kind of a turning point, I'd say.
Right. So I think, or we first met actually when both of us were students
Yes,
at San Francisco Conservatory about 7 or 8 years.
That was 8 years ago.
Time is moving fast.
Yeah.
And you were a student of Mason Bates,
Yes.
who's one of the or was one of the most famous composers in the department, and someone with a very distinctive style. Can you take us back a little bit to that portion of your compositional education and what that left you with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started composing probably in the year of 2015, so 1 year before I moved to the States. I went to this music high school in China, but I was majored in musicology instead of composition. But composition has always been some part of my life. I compose and I enjoy writing music. So I would say my composition career really actually started since San Francisco. So since Mason Bates, he really helped and inspired me a lot. His music, I'm a huge fan of his music. All the symphonic works. Now writing for orchestra is one of my biggest passion.
Right.
I think I got all these influences from him. Yeah, that was a great time. A pivot moment for my composition.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've often noticed as a similarity actually between Bates's writing and yours is this sort of integration of the almost improvisatory experience of everyday life and everyday things into more formal musical composition.
Yeah, that's some practice we would do in our lessons, composition lessons. We would just sit on the piano and play random things.
Random.
Yeah.
So you'd have a free improvisation.
Yes, we did. That was really fun and it was really good practice. I would suggest.
And how would that get connected into the process of actually writing down music, or was this just practice to get your improvisatory mind flowing?
Yeah, so I would record some of these improvisations and then I'll listen back to it, save some good moments for later, write them down. I always do handwritten sketches, so until today. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I remember actually from then. I don't remember what we were rehearsing for something, but you were you spent so much time. Mason is traveling all over the world doing stuff, and not there that much. You made his studio basically your home. I remember you had a pair of slippers there.
I did. In our studio, I basically lived there. Yeah. I composed or played the piano or improvised or just randomly watching YouTube videos in our studio until 11 a.m. That's when the school closed.
Yeah. So I remember actually, we worked together on I think a chamber quintet or something while you were there. But I remember noticing actually after I had moved on from SFCM, you were still there. A piece that that you had written for string quartet and pipa, which was that was the moment when I remember thinking, this is a special composer, because that was a special piece. Actually, let's zoom in on that a little bit and talk about it. So the piece is called "Ecstatic Burial" for string quartet and pipa. You wrote it in 2017.
2017.
Yeah. First of all, actually, why don't you tell people what is a pipa in case they don't know?
Yeah, a pipa is a Chinese plucking instrument. You pluck it like this way. I don't play it, but yeah, it's a Chinese traditional instrument.
Right. And what was it that inspired you to write the piece for pipa and strings?
Yes, so it was a really personal connection between me and my close friend Xu Xingmeng, who was a pipa virtuoso. She was my high school classmate. That's where we met in China. And then I found out she was in San Francisco and I was in San Francisco in 2016. I was at the SFCM and she was doing a undergrad degree in some technology and AI related studies at Stanford. So she's really one of the most talented people I've ever known. We reunited in San Francisco, and there was one day we were hanging out and grabbing boba, and I think I brought up the idea that I should really write something for her, maybe a pipa concerto, and she got really serious, and I became really thrilled about this idea of writing a pipa concerto for her. So with the idea of a concerto in mind. But that was really an early point of my career. I feel like I wasn't confident enough to balance the pipa and an orchestra. And then I realized string quartet is a really good option. I can have like this duality of chamber music sound, and also it can create some really epic sound as well.
And the pipa is a relatively soft instrument too, so it's maybe slightly louder than a guitar, but only slightly.
Yes.
I remember, I was actually cover conducting at the San Francisco Symphony a little bit after that, and they were doing the Lou Harrison pipa concerto with Wu Man, and the balance in that was so hard to get right.
It is.
Yeah. So, can you talk a little bit about? I know there's a massive Eastern literature for pipa and a small Western literature or literature that integrates it into your Western musical practice or the Western orchestra. Talk about how you used that or learned from that tradition in your writing and made it your own.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did a lot of research before I actually started writing this piece. Absolutely, the Lou Harrison Pipa Concerto and Tandun's Pipa Concerto these two were the absolutely go-to pieces if you would like to write a pipa piece. Yeah, they're masterpieces. I listened to them a lot of times. And I also explored some traditional repertoires that Shuxi actually recommended, and some of them I just found them myself.
Yeah.
In terms of learning, I was in the period, so I started composing 2015 and this piece was written in 2017. I was in an early stage of my career and I was still trying to trying to establish my own compositional language.
Yeah.
So at that point, I didn't want to take too much influence directly from other composers, harmony or melodic shapes, or I intentionally tried to avoid that when I listened to these pieces.
Right.
And I focus a lot on the actual technique and how I balance a pipa and the rest of the instruments, and just in general how a concerto works, how they dialogue and how they interact with each other, the soloist and the rest part.
Yeah. And talk about the name a little bit. Ecstatic
Yes.
Burial is a little bit of a paradoxical sounding name. So where did that come from and what does it mean?
So it came from a story I read about Zhuangzi, who is an Asian Chinese philosopher from, I believe, 4th century BC, 3rd or 4th century BC. There was a time when I was in San Francisco, I took this course called Western Civilization, taught by Dr. Holman.
Dr. Holman, yeah.
Everybody was required to take that class. It was a really hard class, but we did some of the most fun things I've ever done, and we read a lot of writings from the Greek philosophers.
Yeah.
And that surprisingly led me to the other direction of exploring the Asian Chinese philosophers. So I read about the story of Zhuangzi. His wife passed away a couple of days ago, and his friends wanted to visit him.
Yeah.
But when his friends arrived at his place, they actually saw this surprising, shocking scene of Zhuangzi beating a basin and singing happily, even dancing, vibing a little bit with the music.
Yeah.
So that was shocking for his friends, and they were confused. So they questioned Zhuangzi why he was doing this after his wife just passed away, and they truly loved each other.
Yeah.
And Zhuangzi gave them the super long answer of his deep philosophy. In short, it's about life as a circle, and the ending of life is the beginning of something bigger. So it's something really worth celebrating, and it should be really festive.
Right. So how would you say you took that idea and manifested it in
Yeah.
piece?
Yeah, I did. I feel like that's I want to make this connection with a Asian Chinese traditional idea with something, because I was, as a young immigrant in a new country, there were a lot of cultural shocks, and I want to make something that's both personal about me and my reactions to this philosophy, but also something historical related. Yeah. And that's still part of the main thing I'm doing right now.
Yeah. And I believe that Ecstatic Burial is going to be turned into a string orchestra version and premiered at the Brockton Symphony. I'm excited to do it.
John is going to conduct it
next year. Okay, so on to the piece that we are working together on in it's less than 2 months now, one month and a half at the BNMI Festival at the end of May. It's called Make Way for Ducklings, which many of us who grew up in New England might recognize as the name of a popular children's book by Robert McCloskey, right? Yeah, I had it on my shelf when I was growing up, but you grew up thousands of miles away from here. How did you come to know about this story?
Yeah, I believe I vaguely remember the storyline. That I actually read the story when I was little. I think there's absolutely a Chinese translation of this book. So yes, this is a famous book.
Okay.
It's international. I found out a lot of children's books are
Yeah.
actually quite international. Um, yeah, and then I believe I read it again. There was a period of time when after I moved to the States, I was really interested in children's book and graphic novels and things like that. So that was when I rediscovered this book. And then for this specific project, it took me about 3 or 4 months to think about the theme and the topic I really want to write about and to present it to the world. That was the time this idea suddenly popped up in my mind that I wanted to write something about this.
Right. So you say in the introduction to the piece that it's less a depiction of the actual story of Make Way for Ducklings than it is of the statues of the ducklings that are out on Boston Common memorializing the book, and the fact that people come upon them and dress them in different outfits through the course of the year. So you talk about that, how you came upon that as a compositional topic and what it symbolized for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, started with the book. I read the book, and then I revisited the statue. I came across the statue when I just moved to Boston 2 years ago, and then as a field work for this project, I revisited the statue. And I was just really inspired. But instead of writing a very narrative piece, I really want to express this general vibe about this cultural behind Make Way for Ducklings. That was the first intention I wanted to do. And then there was one day I was randomly scrolling my Instagram pages and found this picture of the statue of Make Way for Ducklings dressing up in Christmas vibe. That was Christmas time. And they were adorable. So I found out there's this hashtag on social media, hashtag Make Way for Ducklings, and you can explore that on your own if you wish. With all these cute pictures of the ducklings dressing up in seasonal clothing and costumes. We just had the Easter bunny ears on these ducklings, and there is something that's really striking about this for me, that strikes me a lot. That is the spirit and the history, the literature, and the humanity, the culture behind this simple gesture.
Right. And the fact that, or it seemed that there's this sort of basis or framework of the statue, and it can have all this variety of cultural expression built on top of it.
Yeah, it is. And the statue was actually by a women sculptor, Nancy Shun. I really love that. So
All right.
great.
So take us through the piece a little bit. It's consists of several sections. How did you think about that, and what are those meant to represent?
Yes. So I would say there are 4 large sections, 3 or 4. Some of them are really ambiguous. I like to make my music formal structure a little more ambiguous now, is my current interest.
Okay.
In the first section, I marked it as narrative and entertaining. So it should be really all about the general vibes you can feel personally relates to the gesture, the action of dressing up the ducklings. And a little bit when I was composing, I was thinking about the illustrations from the book.
Yes.
They were amazing. They were adorable. And then moving to the middle, to the second section, which was my favorite, actually, I marked expression marks as jolly and quack.
Yes.
If you remember that.
I do. So is is quack here an adjective or or an injunction, telling the musicians to quack?
It can be both. So I was really, when I was writing it, I envisioned myself being part of the story, being one of the ducklings.
Ah,
So I wanted the musicians to maybe try and experience the same thing.
yeah.
Envision themselves either be actually being the ducklings, or maybe as a kid when they were reading this book. Just like this section can be so free for either the musician or me or the audience to give some of your personal interpretations to this book.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about your music in general, and this piece is a great example of it, is the variety of timbres that you use, and you especially make it so. So this piece is scored for Piero. Yeah, so flute, clarinet, violin, cello, piano, and percussion, and it's one percussion player, but it's an enormous battery of instruments ranging from glockenspiel to ratchet to all sorts of things. So could you actually tell us a little bit about sort of how you think about writing for percussion in a piece like this, and how you use it to expand the timbre options? I think there's a lot to be learned there.
Yeah, great question. So yes, percussion is my favorite part to write always, especially if I'm a composer interested in orchestral music. Percussion is something I feel like it's a blender of texture and timbre, because you can use it to do a lot of things. It's so flexible. In this piece, for example, a Pierrot ensemble, by the way, is one of my favorite instrumentation, because we have the strings family, the winds, and then piano, percussion. We have a little bit of everything, so it has the possibility to create both the sound of a very intimate and delicate chamber music sound, and both on the other hand, this very grand, powerful symphonic sound.
It's a very efficient medium.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, the use of percussion to create and to blend these timbres or something, I found it really effective. I used, as you said, from the pitched percussions, and I use a pedal bass drum can create this very low and orchestral sound, and also sometimes a whistle. Can be really effective.
Yeah, especially I remember there being a police presence in Make Way for Ducklings.
Exactly, that was the moment. So listen for the whistle in the last section of Make Way for Ducklings. You will hear a whistle that represents the police officer stopping the traffic to help the ducklings cross the street.
Yes. So I one of the most sort of recognizably maybe Bostonian things about the piece is there is a very Irish or Celtic informed finale to the piece, or it has that feel anyway. Can as someone who you've lived here in Boston for 2 years? Okay. So what are you hoping that a listener to this piece, maybe who's not from town, takes away about the spirit of the city of Boston?
Yeah, so there are a lot of things about the spirit of the city of Boston. A local community and local culture is something I feel like really worth exploring and preserving. And my intention was to invite everyone, all the audience, to be part of this, to feel and to appreciate this little local culture that is both refreshing and adventurous and fun, but also to be the witnesses of this making progress urban culture. It's also related to social media, and I was really trying to create this timeless dialogue between my piece, Make Way for Ducklings, and Robert McCluskey's book and Nancy Shin's statue. So you will feel a lot of different things in this piece, the performance.
Fantastic. This piece is nearing its premiere, and my guess is you've moved on to composing other things. What are you working on now? What can we expect next?
Yes, so I just finished up a first draft for a new commission by pianist Shalon Lee, who is also going to play some of my other music.
He'll be in the BNMI festival.
Yes, so we have a personal connection, and he commissioned me to write a new piece for him, and I decided to write it for piano and narrator and percussion, because I love percussion, as I said. So I finished up that draft, and I'm really excited for the concert. It's also going to be in Boston.
All right, and when will that be?
Sometime in May.
Fantastic.
Yeah, date TBD.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Yangfan, for chatting with us. So Yangfan's new piece, Make Way for Ducklings, will premiere at the BNMI annual festival at the end of May. Check out our website for details of location and time, and we hope to see you there. My name is John Masko. I look forward to seeing you in the audience for the festival soon. Thanks.
Thank you.